ahead and introduce Yolanda, all the way from South Africa. She will be moderating the panel on trade, development, and gender. We all know that gender plays a big role. The African woman has been sort of the story of Africa is the African woman, but it's always about the African woman suffering, or the African woman just doing very small, informal micro businesses. But we're saying that has to change. We need to bring the women, the youth, and the men all hands on deck to make sure that we develop this continent. So I'll go ahead and introduce Yolanda. I see she's right there. If you could just go ahead and introduce your panelists and take this panel forward. We can't wait to hear more about trade, development, and gender. Thank you, Yolanda.
Thank you so very much, Anne. It is such a pleasure to moderate this amazing panel with great lineup of speakers, which I am looking forward to hear from each and every one of them. How we will be doing this is we'll have each speaker introducing themselves and briefly on what they do. In summary, what their businesses are doing and how they are adding value into African economy, or let me rather say into the global economy. Thereafter, we'll just start our conversation with all our amazing speakers. Now, I will start with calling up Yavi Madurai, who is an executive director for Pan-African Business Women Association. She will just give us an overview of who she is and how is she serving the world. Over to you, Yavi. Thank you.
Hello, my South African sister. I'm down the road from you with load shedding. Thank you so much, Yolanda. Thank you, Anne, for a platform like this to always have the, this opportunity to speak about women in trade, and from a development or economic development perspective. I'm Yavi Madurai. I'm the Executive Director of the Pan-African Business Women's Association, or as we lovingly like to call it, PABWA. We are a think tank for economic transformation, and we look at initiatives, research studies, and development campaigns, projects, and programs that allow Africa's women and youth to be able to actively participate, and be included in the economic agenda of Africa via various initiatives, programs, and campaigns.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Yavi. We are looking forward to hearing more from you as we advance with our discussion. Now, I would like to call Phyllis Mwangi, who is the CEO of Edge Consult. She will tell us briefly about what she does and how she is serving the world. Over to you, Phyllis.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Yolanda, my fellow continent mate. I'm Phyllis Mwangi from Kenya. And in form of an introduction, I am an entrepreneur. However, since 2016 up to March 2021, I was the resident consultant for the She Trades Commonwealth project in Kenya, a project that was funded by the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office and has seen women in 4 sectors, especially agribusiness. I was really happy to see the products that that the lady showcased, from Eva's Coffee to what was the other brand? I forget the name of the brand. She the handbag that she showed, those were members that we worked with in the long term and the short term. Was a 3-year project. And so we generated about $24 million in terms of sales for women in business, about 3,000 women impacted in Kenya. So that gave me a new vision and a new zeal and a new desire, because I realized, yes, there are blockages, but there are also massive opportunities for women in business. So as an entrepreneur, I run a company. Edge Consult is the company. We've been in business since 2007. Running productivity skills from customer care, sales and marketing, and leadership, team effectiveness for local corporates in Kenya, including the UN, and across the globe. And one other company that I run, which I'm really passionate about, is a technology company, Tandao Commerce, which is currently running, flower shops and products, drop shipping to the US market. So I'm an e-commerce entrepreneur. And really from 2012, that's how long the journey has been. And just realizing the changes from, the financial systems, the logistics, and even platforms, a lot has changed. And I think the opportunities are really big. And I'm, ready to share this with men and women alike. In previous engagements as a consultant, I've worked with the Vital Voices, VV Grow, on the Accelerator Program for Women in Africa up to 2016. I've worked with Goldman Sachs, the 10,000 Women Program, worked with IFC, Business Edge, I'm a facilitator there, World Bank, and also a recipient of the Goldman Sachs Award in 2008. So that's the long and the short. I'm really looking forward to the discussion. Thank you, Anne and the Regal team, for doing a really great job to bring us all together.
Thank you, Phyllis. What an amazing summary of what you do. So now I am going to move straight to our next speaker, who is Almas Juwani. I hope I pronounced that correctly. She is the CEO of Almas Juwani Foundation. She will also be telling us how is she saving the world. So over to you, Almas. I hope you are.
Yeah, hello, Yolanda. Almas was not able to make it. She's in Canada and time difference. So today on the panel, we just have Phyllis, Yavi, and Gloria.
Awesome. We move straight to Gloria then. So I will give over to you, Gloria Atuheirwe. I hope I have that one right. Please forgive me if I don't. I will learn next time. Gloria is the director in the Gender Inclusion and Women in Trade, Trademark East Africa. So Gloria, please tell us more about who you are and what you do.
Thank you, Yolanda. Good evening, everyone from Nairobi. It's a pleasure to be on this conference this afternoon. So my name is Gloria Atuheirwe. I'm from Trademark East Africa. Trademark East Africa is an aid for trade organization. We've been around for 10 years, counting. And really our mission is to grow prosperity in the region through trade. So initially we were working in the East African countries only, but now in the last 1 or 2 years, we've expanded our operations to Southern Africa and the Horn of Africa as well. My particular role is, I think based on a lot of the conversations that have happened in the course of today, is because we know that there's a disparity in terms of the benefits, the access, the opportunities for women, particularly in the trade space. And so we designed a program that seeks to bridge that gap and just create kind of a fair sort of level ground for access to both the opportunity and the benefits from trade. I think the continent has advanced very significantly over the last decade or 2 decades in the trade space, but we have to ensure that that trade is sustainable and it's inclusive. And that is what I do every day. My mission really is for the empowerment of women, not just from an economic perspective, but also social empowerment through trade. Thank you, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you for that, Gloria. We are also looking forward to getting deep into the conversation on how do we advance trade to ensure that women are developed, and also while doing that, we're also developing our economy. Now, a brief introduction about who your moderator is. My name is Yolanda Mabuto, as I have been introduced by Anne. I am the founder of Divaine Growth Solutions, which is an organization within the energy sector that seeks to support and implement the Sustainable Development Goals. One of those goals being gender equality. We make sure that we support women across sectors, and we're also very keen on keeping things clean across the sectors. I am also the chairperson of the South African Institute of Electrical Engineers and the board member for Africa under the World Business Angel Investment Forum. The idea is to make sure that we create access for finance for women businesses so that they are able to scale up and grow their economies. Now, enough about me. I am so excited to just dive straight into our discussion around trade, development, and gender. And we've got the right panelists to talk about exactly that topic with us. So please listen attentively because there's so much wisdom from this panel. Now, Yavi, I'm going to start with you. When we talk about digital, platforms, and we, as I've said, we need to make sure that there's access to finance, but now the new thing has been digital, access, and we have seen that during COVID that many people were not able to jump into the wagon of digital, way because there is no access. Now, I want to find out what are some of the obstacles, that are hindering us in Africa to successfully develop Africa using the digital, innovation, elements to ensure that we grow women as well as growing our economy. So can you just take us through around that?
Sure, thank you, Yolanda. So digital is my skill base. When I'm not fighting for women's rights, it's what I do in my spare time, so to speak. Digitalization, before COVID, so pre-COVID, there was this horrible term that used to be used, and I say horrible because it's a personal, I'm a techie. So when we hear the term Fourth Industrial Revolution, no. So digital transformation or digitalization was being bandied about, before COVID, pre-COVID. We heard about, Internet of Things and how it was going to change our lives and how factories were going to be manless, so to speak, or womanless, so to speak, and so on and so forth. And then COVID hit, and we were put in the midst of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, as it's called. Before COVID, my one statement used to be that the Fourth Industrial Revolution is actually a revolution for women. Women were left out. When we speak about, not being left behind, women were left behind in many ways. And I'll give you a quick example of that. And I'm not even talking, we won't even get to, rural women and young people that don't have access to online. We won't even go there, as yet, because that is the biggest issue. Let's come back to the people that do have access to online. They were, around you on a regular basis. You're a chairperson, you're a board, I'm assuming you're an electrical engineer. So you're part of a world of working women. And how often have you heard, and have the women on this panel heard, the story of having to leave a career, either to take a sabbatical or to leave your job because you need to separate yourself or divide yourself up between working, 12, 15 hours a day and being able to be at home for when you have your baby, for example, and kids and. With the world, as COVID impacted us, we all of a sudden had inclusivity because women were taking care of their kids and being able to be present at work using the digital solutions. So all of a sudden, the world changed to create inclusivity for women in various ways. Now let's talk about rural and youth and access to online connectivity in Africa is shocking. You and I just are impacted by load shedding as we speak in South Africa. And when there's load shedding, literally there's no signal. I have fiber and I still can't access. I have an inverter and I still can't access. It's so shocking. So digitalization and connectivity, the digital divide is wide in Africa. The gender digital divide is even wider, which leads to the economic divide and the non-inclusion of women in the economic agenda of Africa. With digitalization, women that are not, traditional across the continent, that, not necessarily able to work because, husbands want them at home or traditional based systems, can now have, shops, online shops via Instagram and Facebook, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's different ends of the spectrum. There's different ways, we can talk about this for an hour, but I don't want to take up too much time in answering you. But this is basically why digitalization and increased connectivity and closing the gender digital divide, or focusing on closing the gender digital divide as we close the digital divide, becomes critical because economic inclusion is, after all, the decade that we are living in in terms of 2020 to 2030's economic and financial inclusion of women.
Thank you for that, Yavi. In terms of the girl child, just a follow-up question. When we talk about digital inclusion, what are some of the low-hanging fruits that we could, use to ensure that young people are also catched at a young age in ensuring that they embrace? I know young people are very much excited about, social media, but there's more to technology, there's more to innovation than that. What are some of the low-hanging fruits, and more specifically in rural areas where most people are cut off completely into the urban life? What are some of the things that we could take, one or two, that we could maybe use to just advance people? Thank you.
Sure. So if you look at, and I'm going to speak very loosely now, but across the continent, various countries have programs, especially coding programs for young children and youth and young women specifically. We need to encourage our young women and young girls to get involved in industries that are male dominated. So sometimes it's a case of, not encouraging our daughters and our granddaughters and our sisters in getting involved. I mean, you're a classic case of that. You're a classic example of that. I'm a classic example of that. In terms of getting into industries where it is male dominated, the technology industry is male dominated. But there are coding courses, there are online free coding courses. Governments across the continent, the United Nations, UNECA, the African Union, there are various entities, and I could go on naming many, that have free access to online classes, skills development, education, knowledge building from 4 or 5 years old right through to old women. Who now need to also close their digital understanding and their digital gaps. So it's not just about youngsters all the time, it's also about the older generation because they are economically contributing. But across the spectrum, there are things that are available. There is nothing that is not available today. But unfortunately, we have to balance the issue of the fact that you still need access in order to be able to do that. But schools, universities all offer free courses. Keep an eye out for it, ask questions, look, speak to your teachers, ask them, speak to people in the know, and you will get the information that you need to be able to access some of these programs. There's a myriad of them. PABWA you can follow us on social media. Every now and again, we post all the different opportunities that are available for, it doesn't matter how old, from very young to very old in terms of digital skills development and digital knowledge building.
Thank you so much for that, Yavi. And I think this is why we need to have such discussions, exactly to share information, because most people perish because they do not have the information or the right information. Now, I would encourage you to please follow Yavi so that we can get those free courses or programs that we could use for young people in our schools to make sure that we develop them and catch them as they're young. Now, as we move over to our next speaker, Phyllis, while we're still on the digital, topic, we're looking at the international trade and the development of it. I want to find out what are some of the new trends in the global trade that we should be aware of as we advance into the trading, network. What exactly should we be looking out for?
Well, thank you, Yolanda. I think I'm going to pick it up from where Yavi left. I'm total agreement with what she's talked about. And there's a concept, one of the new things that's really coming up, a global trend, is the concept of aggregation. I think you both alluded to the fact that there are, the digital divide is huge. And it's widening in Africa by the day because of access to, digital services. And so I think I want to put in the concept of aggregation right there in the middle, because this will be one of the solutions to closing this gap. And it's a new trend. For example, let me give an example. In the fashion industry, we have women who've come up with, let me give the example of Kenyan brands, but they are not able, okay, let me say Kenyan brands with maybe beadwork, but they're not able to do the beadwork by themselves. So to bring in the women and the girls from the counties, then they partner with these women to produce a certain part of their brand, maybe the beadwork, and they attach it to their brand and sell it globally. And so there's a new word that has been coined recently that's called global. So this company is global, but it's local. So it's got both local and global touch. The value chain has just expanded from the grassroots all the way to Germany. So there are women participating, and this is now the art of aggregation. That is in the world of fashion. In the world of e-commerce, it's really Jumia. It's Africa. There's so many of them that are aggregating. So they provide the technical services, and you focus on your product and your pricing and your quality. And then you also focus on delivering the product, to the end customer. So I think one of the global trends that I have highlighted right now is just the art of aggregation. It's in agribusiness, it's in fashion, it's in, e-commerce, it's everywhere. And I think this is one of the things that will bridge the gap between the local and the really rural producers that are very gifted with the international market. That's a really great connect. I think the next part that's coming up, the next one that's coming up very strong is sustainability. Of course, we have the SDG, the Sustainability Development Goals, the SDGs. And these, I think from 2020 ceased to be, there was a theory. We understood, the theory of sustainability, great. Let's get rid of the plastic and bring in the paper. And there was a buzz around it. But I think it's only until 2020 that a new trend has emerged. So many people are really beginning to understand all the way to the last part of the value chain is what is ethical sourcing? What is ethical packaging? What is ethical business practice? So the concept of people, planet, and profit is coming up so strong that you can have the fact that, number one, we are going local. We are building local, global businesses with a local touch. People have entered into a global world, but so the unethical practices of corruption, unethical practices of not paying your staff well or not paying them at all, that has got to go. So that's a wonderful new trend, and the world of human resources really needs to come in and help us with sustainability. And it's not just on human resource, but on everything from material sourcing to taking care of the earth, to eco. Sustainability is key. I think the third one I'm going to jump to is there's an appreciation, there's a global appreciation for local products. Not only, and I don't know why I didn't get her name. You can help me with it if you can remember her name. The lady who spoke last from, is she based in Germany? And she showed the coffee and she showed the handbag. I really liked that there's such a demand. Yes, I can see Joy. That was Joy Zen's. Thank you. Yeah, so Joy had a very, to me, it was a classic example that there's so much desire for, number one, the diaspora, and not just the diaspora, but it's like we've entered a moment. The world just is appreciative of Africa. It's like Africa is coming into her own. The Africans are starting to realize we've got value to give. We've got a lot on the table that we had not yet realized, and now we are waking up to it. So there's a great need for branding. And so when we do business model canvas, we talk about the fact that you're developing a local business means if you had a shop before and you were servicing the Kitui community in one county in Kenya, it means all of a sudden, if you go on e-commerce, which is now very possible, you're not going to build a brand just for Kenyans. You're going to build a brand for Germany, Switzerland, Netherlands, because whether you like it or not, you're global. So even if you're intending to be a local company, the moment you go on the world is flat, then right there, you have to begin to package well, you have to begin to make sure the quality is good, you have to go through all those certifications and realize you just perhaps need to focus on one or two products as opposed to selling 1 million products. Focus on one or two and look for your customer, if you name that customer Joy, And that joy, characteristics of that customer, what are the, who is that customer across the globe? Because suddenly you've been opened up to the joy in Kitui, and then the joy in Kenya, but then there's also the joy in Africa and the joy in, international markets. So suddenly your business can go to the billions if you focus well. So there's a great appreciation for local, ethnic, whether it's sourcing, local branding, local marketing, and local products out there. I think I'll stop there and I'll continue, with the next question.
Wow, you've mentioned quite a few important elements that I want to comment on. You have mentioned, number one, I've learned a new word, which I will add into my vocab, which is local. I like that. And you are so correct in saying that the global community is so receptive. There's such a huge appetite for African products and for supporting African businesses. I know one of the organizations called the World Women Conference and Awards, which I happen to be the continent leader for. It's a global initiative where women are supported to ensure that they drive their products. So I can attest to what you are saying. Now, just a follow-up question on what you have said regarding the skills, because we know our wise people have skills, and if we don't look at the skill transfer to young people, then we'll be missing the point as African leaders. So what are the deliberate steps that you think we should take or make to ensure that those skills that women have now in trading, whether it's craft or any type of trading for that matter, how deliberate can we be to ensure that young people catch that so that they can then advance in their careers and be interested, so to attract them and make sure that we also retain them in the trading space while ensuring that we support gender equality as well as our economy. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think the one thing that we can get really right is education. And so for the digital world is what we're calling the STEM education, and now they're including arts in it. So STEM or STEAM is science, what is it? STEM, S-T-E-M, science, technology, engineering, and math, and now arts. The arts. I think that's so critical to rope them in, right? Not when they finish high school, not when they finish university, but right from the curriculum level. I think I'm a great beneficiary of an education system in Kenya that, put in a lot of handwork and brick making. I remember making bricks. I remember doing practical agriculture, practical home science, practical music. So I think that needs to be put in the education system, that, we are messaging, same for the boy child, same for the girl child, that if women can, be doctors and must be educated to become doctors. The next thing I want to talk about is capacity building, if it's after high school or during university, after university, and you're a young woman trying business, the element of capacity building is a must. Because what do I mean by capacity building? It's a big word that's simply broken to say there's, training, there is mentorship, there is coaching, because in this space is where minds are changed and, minds are transformed in capacity building. It's in a class that I got to learn. I sometimes wonder, how did I learn how do I know all this? It's because I sat in different classes long after my university to understand that there is something for women and this is what to do with the women. So capacity building is so critical. And I would like to say that I think government, business support organizations, and university institutions, training institutions, we really need them to come up and help in this area of capacity building, not mattering what the sector may be, just aligning, a lot of training needs to happen and changing of mind on what is our space and how do you strategically occupy that space, either with a service or with a product. And let me also say something I didn't mention that I was leaving for the next one, that if you had a business in, let's say, landscaping, and 2020 happened and it went off, it crashed. do you realize that then you can do services? You can pivot onto services where you teach people how to landscape their garden, because now you're moving into knowledge industry. If you're a coffee farmer and perhaps, you know, just as an addition, because coffee did very well in 2020, as an addition, it's not that your business collapsed, but on the side, if you're a great coffee farmer, it would be nice to know how coffee is grown. It would be nice to know how different grades of coffee happen, how different types of coffee happen. And now that the world is a coffee drinking world, they would all be listening. If you have a farmer who, you know, then brings in young people who can talk about what's the process of coffee making, that's how we need to begin to engage the younger people. They will do the social media, they will do the content, they will be on YouTube, they'll be on social media. Eventually, not only are you just earning from coffee, but you're also earning from content on coffee, and the world is just exploding, and you're also branding yourself. So I think that's what I would like to bring in. And not just coffee, not just landscaping, but literally every business. It's said that by 2025, the knowledge industry, the self-education industry is going to be a $1 billion a day, $1 billion a day. So I think this is an opportunity for the youth that we really must begin to look at, just the entire service of content. Yeah.
Interesting. This is the right time indeed to make sure that we encourage our young people to make use of what is available and ensure that they jump into the wagon while it's still hot and fresh. Now, moving over to Gloria, in your capacity as the gender inclusion and women in trade captain, I would say, or leader, tell us, you know, we know that women are currently at the bottom of the pyramid, and we are still trying to go to the highest. Now, how can we improve our business competitive? What are the opportunities that are available for women right now? Women who are in businesses that they could be tapped into and advance, you know, their businesses and their economies.
Thank you, Yolanda. Yeah, very interesting question. And just picking up from the discussions from Yavi and Phyllis. Firstly, I'd just like to say that in a way, that statement is not really a true reflection. We kind of often treat women as a homogeneous group, but they really are not. Women in business are such a varied, complex, interesting dynamic. And I think it's very important to sort of unpack that for us to really be able to move the needle in this space. So I think it's important that we try and understand what are the constraints, but at the different levels. So that if you look at East Africa, I work across East Africa, for example. So if you look at the profile of your average exporter, for example, in Kenya, compared to the profile of your average exporter in Burundi, you'll come up with a completely different profile. So if we talk about exporters in East Africa, their realities are very different. And I think that's a very important thing to appreciate as we go into capacity building, for example, as Phyllis mentioned earlier. But I think to address the issue of competitiveness, we need to obviously look at what are the constraints, what are the barriers. I think they've been touched on quite a bit by the previous speakers. But I think it's important to emphasize just the fact that there's just limited access. It's not no access at all, it's just limited access to various inputs and resources that women need to build their businesses. Things like land, things like capital. Yavi talked about technology. So these are things you need to be able to build to be competitive, but there's kind of disparities in terms of access to some of these resources. But one of the things that I would like to speak about mainly is also for informality. As you said, businesses usually, and not generally, but quite a number of women-owned businesses are small, trading in small value or fragmented or opportunistic. When you see an opportunity, you jump in there, then when it doesn't work, you pull out. So that's kind of how we've been defined over the years. And this has been a barrier in and of itself because you're not able to scale, maybe you're not able to get into contracts in the regional or global value chains just by virtue of how you've been running your business. And that's, of course, for various reasons. I recall ITC did a study, I think maybe 3 years ago, and they found that of all the export firms across I think the globe, in East Africa, the average was only 27% on average. Of course, the percentage is higher in Kenya than in other countries, but just a small percentage of the export farms are actually owned by women. So trying to figure out why. There's a number of constraints at the back end of that. One of those being information. Information sounds so obvious, but there's a lot of information asymmetry out there. And bridging that gap is critical if you're going to build businesses and competitiveness of women-owned business. Where do I find the information that I need? Is it easy for me to understand that information? Someone talked about import and export processes. These for many years have been very complex, very heavy documentation. Who would support a business to sort of unpack that and just figure out what's the best way to go about this process? So a lot of it is around just passing on the information, availing information in a way that is easy to consume, that's easy to translate based on the sector or the business that a woman is running. Of course, we can't run away from the gender roles, and I think Yavi touched on this one, and that affects networks. It's not in of itself an issue, but it usually constrains you in terms of how do you build a network in the market, not just local, but global. You need time, you need to invest in market intelligence, you need to invest in, connecting with people within your country and beyond, and that takes time. Time is really an asset that many women don't necessarily have, and that creates a disadvantage. But on the flip side of it, again, has been said before, technology has sort of bridged that gap. So people have been able to do businesses from the comfort of their homes, and that's really great. So I think that's what we have to pick up on, take advantage of technology, take advantage of the opportunities that are opening up in the continent through the AFCFTA, take advantage of the improvements, a lot of automation now in processes, not just from the private sector side, but even from governments. Governments have really, Trademark has worked a lot in that space of automating processes, export processes, import processes, clearing, customs, all those processes have really, really improved. And now you find people are spending less time, clearing their documentation, getting certification, clearances, and all things like that. So I think there's so much opportunity now that women can take up because of the advancements through technology, through removing barriers, even corruption and processes. Because of the slowness in processes, there's a lot of issues around corruption and transparency, but a lot of trade facilitation mechanisms have come in place. And so many of these issues have now been addressed. And so it's easier. It's not completely without challenge, but it's much easier now to get into the trade space, both in a regional and global sense.
Thanks for that, Gloria. I know you've mentioned that there are some opportunities that are available for women, to trade locally and globally. But I'm thinking about women who are in rural areas. They're sitting there selling their small things, and they really don't feel that they can be competitive, because when we talk about exports and imports, for them it becomes a pie in the sky. Like, how do I even reach there? What steps can we, even if it's one, just to get them in the room, and then so that they can get some information? Those who are in the most rural areas, what are some of the things we can do just to ensure that we don't leave them out completely in trading? They can also have opportunity to start maybe trading locally or continentally. And thereafter, once they've learned from local or continental trading, then they can be advanced into the global platform. What are some of the things we could do to support those women or those young people who are trading, but at a very small scale in their communities?
Yeah, awesome. I'm excited about that question because the majority of the portfolio I work with actually is with the small and informal traders. And the issue is, again, around just understanding the dynamics around in which they are doing their businesses. Usually, again, it's issues of information. It's just not being well versed with what's available. And I'll give you an example. A lot of the women we work with, we call them women cross-border traders. So traditionally, they would move from one side of the border and move commodities across to the other side of the border. So for many years, even till today, especially when COVID hit, a lot of these women use the informal routes, what we call pioneer routes in East Africa. So they're going literally through bushes, through rivers, the back route, trying to avoid any form of authority or regulator along the way. What they don't understand is that there's actually regimes in place to support that kind of trade. There's a simplified trading regime that would help you facilitate your crossing from one end of the border to the other with really minimal disturbance. So many people don't even know about that. And that's why they forever keep trying to use the illegal routes. So sensitization is a big part of what we do, just raising awareness around what the opportunities are and of course, what rights and responsibilities small traders like those have. So it's something that we continually have to build, but next to that is just the power of collective. I call it the power of the collective. So the fact that the power of the collective in the sense that you can't do this journey alone. So there's power in numbers. Come together, form a group, identify what the common commodity you have or that you can trade in, pool your resources together, and you grow your value that way. Because many times we are fragmented, we run small businesses here and there, and yet if you came together, really you'll be able to grow and make a difference. So we facilitate, we build that a lot in our capacity building. We build cooperatives, we build platforms that really bring women together. First of all, to build their own network, but also to optimize the resources that they have and enable them to be able to, take up big opportunities beyond their, beyond their own small or local space that they are operating in.
Thanks, Gloria. I like what you said about the power of the collective, because sometimes we overthink things, whereas if we can come together as women collectively and position ourselves, we're able to get one person from whatever country to come and mentor a group of women instead of one, so which saves time and effort. So I like that. I also want to pose this question to you, Yavi, where when we talk about women in business and we talk about those women in those small scale or those townships, how do we ensure that we include them in the digital arena? What are the steps that we can deliberately make to ensure that women specifically in business are included somehow? It could be a small scale digital inclusion, but there has to be a movement where they say that we are being accepted in this economy, we can trade, and then they can aspire to do more and grow more.
So, one of the biggest things, Yolanda, is that we focus on support in ways that are not, and they sometimes big ways. So we look and trust me, I mean, obviously when I say that, I don't mean that something is more important or less important than something else, because obviously the big things are extremely important. But like access to finance is the number one, challenge for women in business, whether that's an informal trader or whether that's, large business, small to medium enterprise, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the biggest things that we need, and Phyllis spoke about it, and the reason I'm raising it is because it has become a core issue for PABWA. And the reason it's become a core issue is because of the research that has been done and the information and what our audience or our market across Africa is telling us. So I'm telling you what we have been told, in other words. Information on the African continent has become or is currency. And when information becomes currency, it does not land in the hands of the people that need it the most. So before we even get to digitalization or access to information via online, information in general does not reach all corners, all nooks and crannies of the continent. PABWA's strategic pillar until 2023 is about democratization of information and ensuring that we devalue the currency that is placed on information. And as Phyllis said as well, it may not seem like it's a big thing because information is information. Why is it such a big story? But women don't have access to it. I'll give you a classic example when it comes to the AFCFTA. The AFCFTA was created, actually, the way it works is that the small business owner actually stands to benefit the most in the way that it's structured. So, you know, if you look at tariffs, if you look at NTBs, if you look at those kind of things, actually the small business owner will benefit relatively. I'm speaking relatively. So when we looked at what information is going out, and I mean, I was a moderator for 2 sessions this morning around the AFCFTA. One of the biggest things from big business, from small business, let alone informal traders or rural women, were we don't have information. The private sector is crying, we don't have information. So we incapacitate ourselves by not holding those that owe us information accountable. So like our governments, we don't necessarily go to our unions, our membership organizations and demand the information that we need. Now let's talk digitalization in the context of what I've just said. There are various things and various access points and various programs and initiatives that are running for women. If you, I mean, you're in an organization, all of us here in some shape or form work in the civil society environment, whether we are engaging with them or like me, whether we are civil society ourselves, is that funding right now is focused on women and youth. So if you go to any funding organization and say to them, I want to do skills development on digitalization for women and youth, they will throw money at you. So there are various programs, initiatives, projects that are happening across the continent for digitalization of initiatives, areas, geographical locations, but specifically for women and youth in Africa and to upskill us to that point. It also comes down to our own initiative. We've got this thing in Africa, and I'm going to say it because it happened, we have it, you know, we happen upon it all the time, is that we also expect a lot to be put in our hands and not necessarily for us to go and look for the information and try to find information that is going to equip us and make us better at what we do. So if we are standard right now, and if we need to be excellent, there is tons of information that is available that if we looked and if we made an effort, we will find, and it's not necessarily all digitalized or all online. So I think it's a balance of initiative and asking around and pushing and you know, not letting boundaries stop you in terms of if you want something, if you want access to information, you will find it if you work and if you look hard enough to be able to find it. So it's a combination of holding those accountable that need to give us access to information and the information itself, as well as the digitalization opportunities. So that is skills development, that is knowledge building, that is capacity using digital. So as connectivity grows in Africa, governments need to support that connectivity by teaching citizens how to use online and how to use the digital world. And there are programs. The smallest, poorest country in Africa, when we looked at it, has programs. So it's not like they don't have. Yes, they may have less than the bigger countries, but they have. So it's a combination of our own initiative. And as women, we will go and dig and find and look for things. So I know that if I say this to women, they will go and look for it. I know if I say it, they will go and find it. So it's a matter of our own initiative, but also holding the relevant authorities or organizations or entities accountable. And when I say accountable, sometimes they may not have it. Like if you come to PABWA and you say, I want, I don't know, something specific, and we don't have it, I guarantee you, because we've got to focus on it, somebody will come back to you and say to you, let us go and look for it. It may take us a little while, but we will go and find it and we will bring it back to you purely because it's going to help other women as well. So it's a matter of working together. It's that collective power that we were just talking about. Women do that so well, don't we? We like come together as a system, we even go to the bathrooms together. So from a collective environment, if we're able to take that sisterhood and the things that work for us as women and apply it to this environment, it will work. We have seen it happen. We are seeing it happen in our programs and our projects, and we will see it grow and happen as the digital divide starts to close. And the louder our voice is depends on you. So the louder we fight, the more we fight, the louder our voices, depends on what information you give us to tell us what you are lacking. And I am but one organization in a continent of many women's organizations fighting for these things. So step out, look out, work at it, ask, people are there, use it, use the access that is available to you, and take advantage of what is there.
Thank you so much for that, Yavi. I wish we could go on and on and on because this is getting interesting. I like what you've said. Information is power. It is even more powerful when we use it in the right way to develop ourselves and our economy. Now, in the same spirit, I want to go over, before we just wrap up, I'm mindful of the time. I want to go to Phyllis in the same spirit of ensuring that we support small-scale businesses. How in building effective businesses that trade, how do we ensure that we realize potential to trade and to scale? Because the idea is always, let's start small, build up, and grow. How do we ensure that there's potential to trade and scale in Africa, or in African women rather?
Well, thank you, Yolanda. I totally agree with what Yavi said, especially about information. And so have you ever noticed there's something that's consistent in life, that, let's take the job market. There's so many people looking for jobs, and then there are so many organizations looking for workers, but finding the right match is always an issue. In the same way, think about this. Think of, there's so many women in business, and there's so many banks saying that they're financing women, but always there seems to be, just a bit of a gap, and not a bit, a big gap. Okay, what else? We say that that's access to finance, jobs, youth looking for jobs, and many organizations in this season have come out and talked about, policies. They've made policies that they're, in terms of supplier diversity, they want to bring in more women-owned businesses to become suppliers. Because as you would know, I got this from WeConnect. We connected one of the organizations that's doing, that's really focused on supply diversity on the private sector. They say that up to how much? Up to Africa, sorry, not Africa. It talks about, well, I wrote my notes somewhere and I can't quite see it, but something like the women in the world only access less than 2% of the global trade that happens within organizations. Only 2%. And so there's work to be done. Okay, so based on your question, you asked then how, what's the solution? For me, one of the big things is, I think I'm going to challenge business support organizations, because to me, I believe a lot in, there's a middleman. There has to be somebody in the middle who sees one problem. Don't try and fix all of them, just fix one. For example, we need one organization in Africa that is the go-to place when it comes to Africa free trade for women in business, the small ones. I think Yavi has said she's probably in that space. We need them to take and amplify that voice. Just one issue, Africa free trade. What is in it for small women in business, small businesses, sorry. What is it for youth? What is in it? What are rules of origin? How can they participate? Are we missing something? What policies are being created? What's the free trade looking like? What are the tariffs? What are the non-tariffs? What's all that going on? And become the go-to organization for information on Africa Free Trade Agreement. Take the next big piece, digitization. Let's have one business support organization that becomes the go-to place for digitization. Now, all of them are intertwined. However, if you put 70% of your work on digitization, we're going to notice that's your brand. If you put 70% of Africa on Africa Free Trade, we'll notice that's your brand, because in between you still need, you still need digitization. You still need, the next thing I would say is product development and design, packaging, just how the product looks. Let one business support organization pick just product development and work purely 70-80% on product development. And then let these business support organizations that are well-funded, well-organized, begin to network amongst one another. And the continent will be totally different. So how do we need to ensure that we realize this potential? There's potential on the ground. There's international funders looking for a good idea, a good business, great women women-owned businesses to finance, but there's no match. And I pray that the business support organizations can become that match, that then if a private sector member is looking for a woman to supply in, construction material, hey, there's someone in the database that is vetted, that is already known, is vetted by their business support organization. They can be fronted, and then the next part of the due diligence can go on with the private sector. So I think that's, for me, is how we can help, this women in business to trade and to scale. I think the next thing is for all, business support organizations and anyone in trade support, like also Africa Trade, Africa Trade, Regis, Anne and team, is to really focus on training women-owned businesses and the youth how to razor-sharp focus, to really pick razor-sharp focus. The concept of one customer going global is a big opportunity right now. And then put around, using the business model canvas, put around that idea, put what exactly are you selling? Who exactly is your customer? How will you deliver? How will they pay? Just business model, and make sure that it is scalable. That it's, we say that if you get sick, your business gets sick, then you're really not in business. If you get pregnant and your business is pregnant, then you're really not in business. You are self-employed. So you need to move it. And that's what someone was talking about, scalability. How scalable is your business? Can if you go on holiday for 2 days, does your business also go on holiday? It's not just about being sick, it's even just taking time off, which is critical for women in business. So I think that would be my point. Scalability is something we as business support organizations and support institutions need to really look at for the upcoming businesses that we're working with. So those are my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Phyllis. We're wrapping up now, and I would like just a closing statement from each and every of our panelists. I'm going to start with you, Gloria. We know that our pandemic has really undermined our efforts for gender equality, but we are women of Africa, and we push, regardless of challenges and obstacles that are in front of us. Now, I want you to tell us, where are we headed? And in a minute or less than a minute, where are we headed as women in Africa in terms of trade and developing our economy? And what is your pledge as a woman leader in Africa to take this forward in less than a minute as we wrap up? If you can, include policy changes if that's something that you are passionate about. So I'll start with you, Gloria, and Yavi, you can follow, and then we close off with Phyllis. Over to you, Gloria.
Thank you, Yolanda. I mean, a good one. So I just pick it up from where I left off. There are 2 areas. There's the capacity building, which is about the woman herself. Sorry, video. And then there is the environment, the trading environment. And so I would say my pledge is twofold. One is to continue to build the capacity to make information available, to build that specialization that I think Phyllis has touched on, and just grow value in that regard. But secondly is on the demand side of things, to support, which is what Trademark does, which is support even the infrastructure around these businesses, the logistics, the markets, physical markets. We are now investing in physical marketplaces, and the policy environment. Dealing with non-tariff barriers, that's a huge one, which I can't really get into now. But a lot of non-tariff barriers, especially within African countries, even within East Africa itself. And we have to continuously advocate and have continuously engaged governments to remove these barriers, because at the end of the day, if it's cheaper for people to trade with China than to trade with each other, then we won't be really making much progress. So there's a lot of work around advocacy, around dialogue, conversations between private sector and governments, and then also building capacity of businesses themselves to take up these opportunities. So for me, we have to look at we have to find a solution that is holistic in that sense. Thank you.
So much, Gloria. Yavi, just less than a second.
Sure. Three things. So I'm going to address it in terms of the title of today's panel: trade, development, and gender. So when we look at it from a trade perspective, the AfCFTA was created for Africa's 1.3 billion people and drove a message of unity. But it is gender blind, and therefore the Women in Trade Protocol. We do not need permission as the women of Africa to take advantage of any economic inclusion tool or opportunity that is available to us. And therefore, we submitted for the Women in Trade Protocol as PABWA, but also from a woman perspective, we need to do two things. There are many policies, 100 gazillion policies that are created on a regular basis because somebody has to tick a box around gender. We need to start holding leadership on the continent accountable for those policies and regulations. In closing, my context for that statement is to say it is the African Women's Decade of Economic and Financial Inclusion 2020 to 2030. The previous one, 2010 to 2020, resulted in a 0.000 result after 10 years. We cannot allow that to happen again, and therefore we need to hold our governments and the African Union accountable in terms of that economic inclusion.
Thank you so much, Yavi.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Phyllis?
Okay, so I just, I found my previous notes. It says from WeConnect website, it says that women in business, women-owned businesses still earn less than 1% of the global billions of dollars spent on suppliers annually. And my parting shot and my pledge would be, I have very clear line of sight on what to do about that, whether it's private sector engagement or private sector policy development, so that we can, and then also on the other side, ensuring that women-owned businesses are well-trained and well-prepared to take up these big billions. Because there's a policy statement, most of them are saying they are bringing in more women-owned businesses, and then we have very many women-owned businesses that are qualified and can't take up those jobs. And when you train a woman and when you give a woman opportunity to trade, eventually she brings in more women. Okay, so it says, when you touch a woman, you touch the entire village. So my commitment and my pledge is to find more women in business and connect them to private sector and international markets. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. I wish we could go on and on and on, but unfortunately, we have to stop here for now. But the conversation does not have to stop. Let's continue this conversation. We've pledged, we've connected. Let us take Africa forward and ensure that we are using trade to develop not just our economies, but our women and young girls. Now I will give over back to our visionary Anne to take us away. Thank you so much, Anne, for this opportunity. And thank you so much to all of you panelists for great wisdom that you've shared with us in this session. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Yolanda, for moderating this wonderful session, something that is very dear to my heart, which is trade, development, and gender, because we cannot leave the African woman behind. And thank you to the panelists, Phyllis Mwangi, Yavi Madurai, and Gloria Atuheirwe. Thank you so much for sharing your insights about what we need to do in regards to trade, development, and gender.